So let's get right into the news. First off, it looks like we may have seen the very first pictures of the brand new upcoming Google Pixel 5. And this phone is going to be an interesting phone from Google because it looks like for the first time, Google actually wants to go a different direction when it actually comes to their premium smartphone line, the Google Pixel line. Ever since they released the 3A and the 5A smartphone, it looks like they are changing their tune. No longer do they want to make their mainline series, the Google Pixel line, one of those premium smartphones of the world. They don't actually want to charge $1,000 for this phone. And according to the rumors and speculations that are, of course, floating around the internet, it really does seem like Google doesn't want this to be a flagship killer just due to the fact that this phone's not going to have crazy performance, not going to have crazy specs, at least when you compare it to other smartphones on the market, like for instance Samsung phones or the iPhones of the world. It's looking like it's not going to be that crazy $1,000 phone. However, it will be a pretty nice phone, and honestly, I think this is the right call from Google just due to the fact that their phones, ever since they started making the Google Pixel line, in my opinion, never really sold all too well. And in my opinion, I really don't think they can compete with things like Samsung and Apple when it actually comes to killer premium smartphones. And I think charging $1,000 for some of their previous smartphones, whether it be especially last year's 4 and 4 XL phones, I think Google really didn't know what they were doing, and they really didn't need to charge all that much money for their smartphones. And I think they're better off if they don't try to compete in that space where they try to make the cream of the crop, the most premium smartphone out there on the market. I think it's better if they do like maybe this mixture of a mid-range phone to maybe a high-end phone where they don't focus on all this different stuff, because their phones show that people don't want to spend $1,000 for the Google Pixel line. They're okay with things like the 3A from last year and the 4A from this year. It really does seem like Google really knows how to excel at that mid-range price point to maybe that high-end price point, but don't push $1,000 for their tech, because we got things again like Samsung and Apple, and time again, it really does shows the market is really interested when it comes to high-end smartphones. Most people look at Apple and Samsung, and if you think about it, Google is kind of like a third wheel here, and they really don't need to be in that space. And I think this is going to be the right move from Google here. And when we talk about specs here, apparently when it comes to specs of the brand new Google Pixel 5, they're not going to be that much better than the 4A. They will, of course, be better than the 4A. They have to give you some reason to spend more money on the Google Pixel 5 compared to the 4A, and they have to have a reason why they would actually have two different models, the 4A and the upcoming 5. So, of course, it's going to have better specs, but apparently it's not going to be that flagship killer, and it's not going to be anything too crazy here, so it's not going to compete with the likes of Samsung when it comes to a high-end flagship killer. And I really do hope if this is going to be the case. Of course, again, these are only rumors and speculations, but I hope if this is going to be the case, I really do hope the price really does reflect that, and I hope they don't push close to $1,000 if that's the case, because if they're going to come out with a phone like this and then push close to $1,000, honestly, it wouldn't make sense, because you would go elsewhere. You would go to places like Apple or Samsung to get your smartphone fixed, and honestly, this really wouldn't make too much of a sense. The one thing I am very curious about, especially with the Google Pixel 5, I am very curious to actually see if Google finally fixed the battery problem, because we can all admit here with the last phones, especially the 4 and 4 XL, they didn't get good battery at all, and that was the main complaint with most people who did get that phone or did test that phone. The battery wasn't up to snuff, at least when you compare it to the competition, or you look at today's standards, and most people wouldn't take that crummy battery of the last phone. So let's hope they improve the battery life of that. Of course, one thing that Google does excel in when it actually comes to their smartphones, of course, definitely has to go to the camera. They make one of the best camera setups on the market, of course, and that's where I really do think they can kind of get away with charging a little bit more for their smartphones, just due to the fact that their camera can go toe-to-toe with things like Apple and Samsung. If you want some of the best cameras money can buy on a smartphone, you do look at the Pixel line. But besides that, there are a lot of other things that the Pixel gets wrong, like for instance, battery life and things like that, which can't warrant a higher price like a premium smartphone that goes for $1,000. So it is very interesting that they're deciding to kind of back away from the premium smartphones of the world. And honestly, I think this is the right call from them, just because I guess they realize, yeah, a lot of people buy our more cheaper phones. What's the point of having these premium smartphones like the 4 and 4XL? We might as well release things like the 3A and also the 4A. That's where everyone gets their value from, the Pixel line, and it makes sense here. So this phone's going to be a very interesting phone now that they're not actually trying to focus on the cream of the crop, the most premium smartphone out there in the world. Now, the next one for today's episode is going to be about Apple, because it looks like Apple is opening up its first floating store in Singapore, and this is very interesting. Now, here is a picture on the internet of the store right here. You can see it's actually on the water, and this store does look amazing. I will have to keep it real with you guys. I like the design of the store. I honestly think it's very interesting too that in 2020 that Apple is deciding to release or actually open a brand new store, just because of course there is a pandemic going on. So how many people out there are looking to go to a store in 2020 with a pandemic going on, with the economies around the world not doing too well, people not traveling a lot and things like that? But I guess they just wanted to open one for whatever reason, and I think this is a pretty unique store for what it is. I do know when it comes to Apple specifically, Apple really does know how to make some amazing stores, and they really know how to make these premium places, and this is no exception here. This store looks amazing, and I'm sure people are going to go to it, and overall it does seem like it's typical Apple here. But I just wanted to cover this because this store actually still looks amazing. It's kind of interesting. According to these pictures, you can see the Apple logo on the building is actually a red color instead of like that traditional white color. But I guess they just wanted to mix it up here, and yeah, this does seem like the future of Apple, and the store does seem pretty futuristic. Overall, pretty cool. And if anyone was going to open a store, of course, in 2020, it would definitely have to go to Apple. Of course, Apple is like a billion or trillion dollar company at this very moment, of course, so they can afford to open as many stores as possible. And hey, even if there is a pandemic going on and a lot of people don't have the same money they would normally have, it's okay. It's Apple we're talking about, and they're okay to take a loss even if people don't show up to the store as much as possible. But yeah, this is definitely one of the coolest Apple stores around, without a doubt. And what makes it cooler is it is pretty much on the water here, which makes it really cool. And apparently it was very expensive to actually build this thing, but I'm not really surprised, because if you look at this, of course, the architecture that was made to build this store, of course, was very complex and just very out there. This isn't like your traditional store that you go to. You can see they really wanted to make this as futuristic and as different as possible when it comes to a store. And of course, that's really how you attract people to your store. You don't just make another store. You make another store, but you put it on the waterfront, and then on top of that, you make it like this round circular sphere. And I think that is actually very cool. And of course, this is very Apple-esque, if you ask me, to be honest. The next one is going to be about Windows 10, because it looks like Windows 10 can officially run Samsung applications. So if you are a Samsung user, you will be able to actually use Samsung applications on Windows 10. It's kind of going to be nice. You can use them alongside your phone. Of course, you still have to have a Samsung phone, so it's going to be convenient for people who run Windows and then have a Samsung phone. So if you wanted to check different applications that you can't run on, let's say, Windows or the mobile web, of course, you could actually access them through Windows 10. So they are partnering up, and I think this is very useful, because the one nice thing I do love with Apple products as a whole, Apple products always play nicely with each other, and you can always, if you have multiple Apple devices, you can always connect them together and get, let's say, notifications with each and every device. You can also message people from different devices. Let's say you have like an iPhone and then you have like a Mac. They go hand in hand, and that's actually very cool. But with Android, a lot of time there really wasn't something like that where you can have multiple devices and they can sync up nicely to one another. So I guess this is kind of like that substitute if you're on Android. More specifically, of course, if you're on a Samsung device. Now, it doesn't say which Samsung devices are going to get this functionality. Of course, presumably it would be the newest models out there on the market. Of course, the Note 20 line that just came out, and then earlier this year the Samsung Galaxy 20 line that came out. So I'm assuming those are going to be the first on the list to actually get these this brand new feature, and then they may roll it out to other Samsung phones in the past. Of course, if you're running an old Samsung device, there's probably no hope for you, to be honest, just due to the fact that when it comes to Android, usually Android doesn't get the best support, but maybe Windows and maybe Samsung will have this good partnership. I mean, it does make sense that they would want to push this out to as many Samsung devices as possible. Also, just taking in consideration how good of a relationship Microsoft has had with Samsung recently. You look at, I think, Games Pass, and they are bringing Games Pass to Samsung devices. And not just that, when it comes to Microsoft as a whole, you look at what Microsoft has been doing when it comes to partnerships with different companies. Microsoft is really good opening up to different companies out there on the market, so maybe more Samsung devices will get this. But this is pretty cool, because a lot of times, again, there may be those few applications that you have installed on your Samsung device, but you don't want to access them on your phone, or maybe your phone's out of reach, and then you don't want to go grab it, or it may be, somewhere you, like I said, again, you can't have access to it. So this would be a very convenient way to access stuff on your phone. If you're already on your computer and you're using it as your everyday work tool, this will be kind of convenient. It's pretty cool, honestly, and it looks like they pretty much just function just like they would function on your smartphone. So when you click on an application, it looks like it just brings it up in the same kind of rectangle box you would see it on your phone, and I think that's a very good implementation here, or implementation. I'm saying it wrong. Basically, it's a good way to actually implement this to Windows 10 here. It looks like from this image here, you can actually make this full screen if you want to make this full screen, which is actually going to be very convenient, because a lot of times the box that they put this in may be a little bit too small for your liking. So again, this would be nice if you can resize these windows here. It's actually going to be very interesting. How many applications can you actually have open at the same time? Can you only have one app open at the same time, or can you have multiple applications at the same time? This would be pretty cool, because then it's kind of like, why does Samsung actually have Samsung DeX? Because Samsung DeX is very convenient and very useful, but if you're already on your Windows 10 computer, it's kind of like, well, you don't really want to switch over to your Samsung device or switch inputs or anything like this. So that's actually going to be very nice. You can just do this on the fly. Now, the next one is actually about Reddit, because it looks like Reddit has banned nearly 7,000 hateful subreddits. And honestly, I'm not too surprised about this. This is the internet we're talking about. And since we're talking about the internet here, most of the time, the internet that we live in, of course, the internet is always going to be toxic. And the internet's going to be more toxic than a lot of places, just due to the fact that you are going to be anonymous on the internet. And a lot of times when people are anonymous on the internet, it's kind of like, why should I care? And a lot of people who aren't normally bad people in real life tend to be more toxic online because they're not scared, because nobody knows them, nobody sees their face. You won't get flack if you put something on the internet. I mean, you'll get flack, but like I said again, nobody will really know you, so it's just another person on the internet trolling people. But that's still pretty high that Reddit has nearly 7,000 hateful subreddits on the internet today, and they had to ban all these hateful subreddits. So you can see how many Reddit users just make all these hateful subreddits making fun of different things out there on the internet. It's kind of unfortunate that you really can't stop all this stuff that goes on the internet or in our daily life that is toxic. There's always going to be those toxic people one way or another, no matter how you look at it, and it's kind of unfortunate, but at least Reddit is doing something about this, and they are banning all these hateful subreddits. Now, of course, is this all the subreddits on Reddit? Of course, it's probably not all the subreddits on Reddit. There's probably a lot of subreddits on Reddit that are probably still toxic and things like that. But anytime they can eliminate some of the problem, it is going to be good, because we already have stressful lives. We already sometimes have toxic lives as well. And it is nice to just not have anything like that on the internet to actually view for our own personal use, because sometimes it's just not great, and we don't want to have to come from our real lives to the online world and have things that are toxic and things like this. And it also shows that Reddit as a company does care about bad, toxic stuff, and they are a company that is trying to eliminate the problem. Of course, you'll never truly eliminate the problem. There'll always be bad people no matter where you look, but just the fact that Reddit does care about this stuff is a good sign for Reddit, and you can kind of say that Reddit does care. Can you trust Reddit? It's hard to say if you can trust the company Reddit, because it really does seem like with a lot of these different companies, a lot of these companies are doing a lot of sketchy things in the long run, and you really never know if they're for the user or against the user or what they're doing with their websites. But just the fact they've done this is actually pretty interesting, to say the least. Now, the last one for today's episode is actually going to be about Microsoft Flight Simulator, because apparently Microsoft Flight Simulator is doing extremely well. It says right here, flight sticks are selling out after the release of Microsoft Flight Simulator. So you can see there is a high demand for this game. Now, I must say, I've been watching this game quite a lot, and what I can say about Microsoft Flight Simulator is it is an amazing game. I like everything about this game. This game actually speaks to me in so many different levels, and the cool thing about Microsoft's Flight Simulator, if you didn't know, this game is actually on Games Pass. So if you have a PC, you can get this on Games Pass for $10 a month, of course, and that's actually a very big bargain. Not only will you get Microsoft Flight Simulator, you'll get a whole bunch of different games that are top-tier games, of course, that are very good AAA games. But yeah, this game is an amazing game, and a lot of people are playing this game. You would think something this boring wouldn't be fun, but just the way that Microsoft handled the release of this game, and just the fact that this game looks gorgeous. Honestly, this is one of the most gorgeous games out there. You owe it to yourself to play this game, even if you're not necessarily a fan of like airplanes or flight. Just the fact that you can fly in the sky and look around at different environments, different cities, different architecture. This game you should at least test just for a little while just to play it, because this game is an amazing game, and it is a gorgeous game. And I understand why this game is also probably doing as well as it's doing now, is of course due to the pandemic. Since there is a global pandemic going on, a lot of people don't get to experience flying as they once used to, and a lot of people are stuck inside, of course, and this is the perfect game for that, for people who are stuck indoors, who just want to experience flying again or experience traveling. This is the best option. And yeah, it's also interesting too that it seems like from this article, the people who are playing this game aren't just casual fans of Microsoft Flight Simulator. They are the more hardcore crowd, just because it does say flight sticks are selling out, and of course casual fans probably wouldn't want to waste hundreds of dollars on flight sticks, because if you didn't know, flight sticks are very expensive. They're not something you just buy for like $20 or $30. In most cases, they are very expensive. Of course, you do get that quality with a flight stick when you actually buy one for your PC, but it just goes to show you what type of people are playing this game. A lot of people are playing this game who are hardcore fans of actual flying. Maybe they flew before in the industry, or maybe they always wanted to fly, but they couldn't get the chance to fly for whatever the case may be. Now's your time to experience flying at its best, and I'm actually very glad that this game is doing extremely well, because that means, of course, Microsoft will be supporting this for the long run. But I wouldn't be too surprised if they did, just because if you look at Microsoft's history with Microsoft Flight Simulator specifically, you can see in the past they really did support Microsoft Flight Simulator a lot. They've had a lot of iterations. They're really trying to refine this product. I do know at the very state of this game, it looks like this game does have some bugs, some glitches, and a lot of people were actually talking about the performance of this game not actually being that well for modern day computers. Sometimes it can just be rough on your hardware, but of course Microsoft is going to keep improving the stability of this, the performance of this thing, and this game just shines, and this game is absolutely an amazing game. Even if you do decide to buy this game outside of Games Pass, you are going to get your money's worth with this game, because this game is just an amazing game for what it is. And honestly, this is a game that I would personally play, and I would dabble in, because this game is just an amazing game. It's also a nice game to just sit back and relax. You don't really have to think too much with this game when you play Microsoft Flight Simulator. And